In the name of God, amen. Please be seated. There's an ongoing joke among preachers who have to, from time to time, give children's sermons, that if you ask any question during the course of one of those, no matter what the question is, the answer you are likely to receive will be God, Jesus, or love. It's funny because it is also very often true. It only becomes a problem when you're looking for something else. Who built the ark? It's not God, Jesus, or love. Who led the Israelites across the Red Sea? Sometimes the answers we're looking for just aren't God, Jesus, or love. But the thing is, kids very often do get it right. When we're faced with a question about the Bible or about our lives as Christians, particularly a question about God and Jesus, the answer is very often love. That's the message of Jesus in the gospel lesson for today. And not just love, but love in community. I was laughing with a friend earlier this week about the writing in John's gospel. Sometimes its poetry is simply so moving, but then there are those other times. Sometimes John seems so wrapped up in making a logical argument that it's hard to cut through the web of words. As if he's trying to cover all the bases, all possibilities, so much so that hardly a shred of clarity of what he intends can make its way through. Like today. In a little while, the world will no longer see me, but you will see me. Because I live, you also will live. And on that day, you will know that I am in my Father, and you in me, and I in you. Those who have my commandments and keep them are those who love me, and those who love me and will be loved by my Father, and I will love them and reveal myself to them. It's like John is trying to cover all the possible ranges of relationships. And in the process, he muddies it. But what is John talking about? I am in the Father, and the Father is in me, and I am in you. The description sounds like those Russian nesting dolls, but as if they were nesting both ways, with the larger dolls going into the smaller. And that's kind of what it is, I suppose. The message of Jesus in John's gospel is the message of inextricable community. The communal nature of God lives in the community of God's followers. And the loving nature of God lives in the community of God's people and in their love. The message of Jesus is a message of community, a message of collaboration and mutual respect. One of the challenges of this text in the English language is that there is no grammatically correct modern translation of the plural you. In Old English, there was ye, a plural form of you. And of course, where I come from in the South, we have y'all, which better conveys what John's version of Jesus is talking about here. But among most English speakers today, you can be either singular or plural. The problem with that for the modern reader is that it leaves a pretty essential part of the message open to interpretation. When I was in seminary, Bishop Kronberger of blessed memory, an earlier bishop here in this diocese, taught a course on episcopal polity, like the political structures of the church, to those of us who were Episcopal students at Drew University. Early in the course, he asked us what we thought the central unit of the Episcopal Church was. Of course, most of us guessed that it was the parish, because are we not a collection of parishes? A few people guessed that it was the General Convention, the overarching governing body of the church. But Bishop Kronberger taught that he believed that the central unit of the Episcopal Church is the diocese. As a church, we are a collection of dioceses. It is the dioceses that make up the bigger governing body, and it's also the dioceses that make up the individual parishes. So our central unit as a church has this built-in collaborative effort. Similarly, we might ask ourselves, what is the central unit of Christianity? I think Jesus would say that it's you, but the plural kind. More accurately, y'all. The problem is our culture has trained us away from hearing you in its plural form. We've been conditioned to think individualistically. We've been conditioned away from community. When we hear Christ is in you, we tend to hear it more as Christ is in me, not Christ is in us. It's true that Christ is in each of us, but the fullness of Christ can't be understood that way. Our only hope of approaching an understanding of the fullness of Christ is in understanding it through community, through the aspects of Christ that are beyond ourselves and complementary to the bits of truth that each of us brings to the table. I've never been a huge fan of cooking shows, but one I always liked was Good Eats, which used to be on the Food Network. In it, Alton Brown, the show's host, explains the science behind why cooking works. On one episode, he explained why salty and sweet flavors go so well together. Very often, sweet flavors naturally come with bitter flavors. One answer to this dilemma is to make something sweeter, to add more sweetener, be it sugar or whatever else. But he explained, salt has the ability to block the bitter receptors in the tongue. Because of that, a little salt hides the bitterness, making sweet flavors stand out more without having to add more sugar or whatever else. Neither salt alone nor sugar alone can create a flavor as complex and satisfying as the two paired together. And that's the way it is in community. Together we create a complexity that more closely mirrors the reality of God than any of us could alone. Our sweetness and our savoriness and sometimes even our bitterness all come together. They work together and they complement one another, and sometimes they counteract one another. And through it all, we experience God in a more complex and satisfying way than any of us could on our own. Christ does not leave us orphaned. We are not alone. The Spirit of truth lives in you. But even more so, the Spirit of truth lives in y'all, in us. Together, that Spirit truly lives. Amen.